Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another video about our canals. In this particular instance, I'm walking down this footpath towards the Oxford Canal. Now, I'm afraid this video is about a crisis. And the crisis that we are having as we walk underneath the railway is that we are very, very short of water. Now, you may have seen on the BBC News website and others sort of lots of unlinked stories about a particular canal running out of water and it being really bad for the boaters on that stretch. But in fact, if we go and have a look at the stoppages map which the Canal and River Trust run, here it is. You can see the true extent of just how many canals at the moment are closed. It really is appalling. Now, when something like this happens, it is usual for a particular subsection of boaters to start jumping up and down and saying that it's all the fault of the Canal and River Trust. It is, of course, not all the fault of the Canal and River Trust. They can't make it rain. But like a lot of things, there are lots and lots of different factors involved in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop filming whilst I cross this railway track. Obviously, it would be totally inappropriate of me to carry on filming over something so dangerous as a level crossing, and I shall pick you up on the other side. Okay, that's us safely across the level crossing, and back to our somewhat unfortunate subject. Now, on our right, hidden in all these brambles, is a little feeder channel, and what that does is it allows water to flow into the canal when the local water table is high, and flow out of the canal when the local water table is low. But canals are not just filled by rainfall and by these little feeder streams. They also, when they were built, they built a whole bunch of reservoirs which exist to supply water to the canal in times of drought and to absorb water from the canal in times of heavy rainfall. And it shouldn't be a big surprise that the major factor in this whole thing is that the spring this year had the lowest rainfall, I think, for the last 100 years, even lower rainfall than the drought in 1976. So there has been basically no water at all to fill up the canal. So what effect has this had on this particular canal, the South Oxford? Well, let's have a look and see. Here we are at the canal, and if you have a look, you can see that the level of the canal is really very low. I'd say it's a good 6 inches lower than it should be. Let's walk up to the bridge and have a proper look. On a day like today, which is a lovely summer's day, you would normally expect there to be lots and lots of boats going one way or the other across the canals. But there are no boats. Why? Well, let's go and find out. So here we are at Wormleighton Reservoir. I'm standing on a fishing platform. Nice place to come and fish, except you can't help noticing that there is in fact virtually no water at all in this reservoir. Now, okay, let's be straightforward first. The purpose of a reservoir is to be emptier in the summer and then fill up in the winter. However, it is not the purpose of a reservoir to be totally and completely empty. So faced with this total lack of water, the Canal and River Trust has done the only thing they possibly can do, and that is close the canal to traffic. So that means that boats can't go through the locks are chained shut, And if you are on that stretch of canal, also, if you've got anything approaching a slightly deepish draft, you're not going to be able to move anyway. So this really is a crisis. So I guess the question is, what can the CRT do about it? Well, I am generally a big supporter of the CRT, and I think it's complete nonsense to be blethering on about, oh, this wouldn't have happened if they'd, spent more money on maintenance. It is true to say that some of the maintenance, especially on this canal, has been challenging over the past few years. Not because the CRT are rubbish, but because the CRT have had their funding wildly cut. And so whilst this isn't the result of it, this is the result of no rain, it has certainly not helped. One thing which might be interesting is to go and have a look at some locks and see exactly what they have done to them to help try and conserve what little water there is. So let's do that. So, what is the consequence of all of this low water? Well, we've already said that the Canal River Trust has had to close an astonishing amount of the canal network. And let's have a look and see why. Here we are at Napton Bottom Lock. Firstly, let's have a look at the levels. They are low. If you have a look at these canal boats here, you can see from the level of sort of scum around them that they're actually on the bankside, are sitting slightly on the bottom, not floating at all. Here is a boat moored on the lock landing, and of course they're going to be going absolutely nowhere. They can't wind and they can't go through the lock. If you have a look up ahead, you might be able to see there is a notice on the locks that says locks closed. So, is that it? Is that all the CRT can do? Just simply close the locks and wait? Well, yes and no. They can do a thing called ashing up the locks. Not sure if they have in fact done it here, but what you do is you chuck in big bags of ash, and as the water naturally leaks through, the ash gets drawn in and essentially stops the water leaking out. If we go around and have a look at these front gates, I don't know if these have been ashed up, but they appear to be leaking remarkably little given how old they are. So I suspect they have indeed been ashed up. The next thing that they can do is they can get on with any of the maintenance that they have to do. And that's actually not as simple as you might think. The reason being that they've actually got their hands full checking all of this out for going around and ashing up the gates and closing locks up and all the rest of it. You can see here that they have closed this lock by dint of putting a padlock on it, and that's it. This canal is not open for business. In the middle of the summer, nobody can use it. Now, I don't think this is or should be about fault. I mentioned earlier that some boaters essentially won't be happy until they can blame the CRT for something. And I guess the CRT themselves have said that whilst it is the weather that has done this, absolutely, it is, possible that some maintenance could better have protected against it for a couple of days at least. But it is a fact that the government have cut the funding again and again and again to the CRT, with this eventual aim of simply stopping funding the CRT altogether. And that absolutely cannot help. There is a big campaign going on. You can see a banner for it here. Keep Canals Alive. And it is the case that if this happens too often, canals will become unrepairable. If you empty a canal, what happens is the clay dries up and then it then won't hold water. And whilst this canal still has some water in it, and obviously they're acting to close the locks in order to keep water in it, there are areas of the canal system which have no water in them whatsoever. I think in Manchester there's a couple of canals that are dry, and you know that's where we are. So it's not the CRT's fault, and you know it's not necessarily the immediate reason is not the shortage of money, but that is not helping. So is there anything we can do about it? Well, yes and no. We can all, as boaters, try to use less water. We can pray for rain and do a rain dance. And I guess the helpful thing would be for certain members of the community to stop whinging about the CRT. But until that happens, we're just going to have to sit it out. And with a bit of luck, we will have a rainy September and the canal system will be back up and running again. Let's hope, eh? On that sort of slightly downbeat note, I will see you guys next time. And in the meantime, have a lovely week. Goodbye.